Honorable Judge, isn't it clear that childhood years are the best years in life? What we mean by childhood is the age from under 18. We believe children under 18 are living the best years of life. Our stance for this debate is simple, that children under 18 are enjoying the best years of life because of many reasons we are going to explain further. Now, without further ado, let me move on to our team's first argument. Our team's first argument is that children can rely on adults. Now, what we mean by this is that children have a wall to lean on when there are problems. For children, it is okay to make mistakes, for they are in childhood. For example, if they accidentally damage someone's property, they can request help to adults. So this is because they're still young, and other people consider them as young. However, in contrast to this, adults are individuals. So if they make a mistake, they must take the burden all by themselves. So they don't have much to rely and lean on. They don't have much people to rely and lean on when there are problems. This argument proves why the years of childhood are the best years because this is the time that children can rely on adults. Now, as I finish my first argument, let me move on to our team's second argument. Our team's second argument is that children feel good even at small things. So what we mean by this is that children feel enjoyment and happiness even when they buy something small. So this can include buying clothes, toys, or more. So this is possible because they have more creativity and is more open-minded. Creativity helps children imagine and feel enjoyment. However, in contrast to this, adults mostly only feel enjoyment and happiness at large good happenings. So more specifically, most adults don't feel happiness when they buy clothes, eat a delicious food, or more. So they mostly only feel happiness when they, for example,
POI,
yes.
do you feel it's correct to label a part of life as best, knowing that not everyone is the same and has different values and interests?
Yeah, they might have different values and interests, but one similarity is that children have more creativity and more of that compared to adults. Now, anyways, let me continue with my argument. So when adults buy clothes or eat a delicious food or more, they don't feel much happiness. They mostly only feel happiness when they buy like an apartment, a car, or get a level up in a company, or etc. So these things happen less compared to small happenings like buying clothes, eating delicious foods, or more. So we believe that childhood is the best time to feel happiness and enjoyment the most. Therefore, childhood is the best time in life. So in conclusion, I have presented the key terms and then introduced our team's first argument. Our team's first argument was that children can rely on adults because they're still young. Our team's second argument was that children feel good even at small things like eating delicious foods, buying clothes, or etc. But in contrast, adults don't feel much happiness at small things. So for these reasons above, I'm more than proud to propose. Thank you.
It's a trap. This phrase is often thrown around jokingly, but today the proposition wants us to believe it's the ultimate truth. They argue that childhood is the peak of human experience, but we, the opposition, stand for a world where autonomy and growth make adulthood the most fulfilling phase of life. Greetings to the House at large. I'm the first speaker from side opposition, and I'll do rebuttals, framing, definitions, and set up one argument and then close in my speech. Starting with some rebuttals. We would first like to challenge side proposition's idea of a happy childhood. Because the thing is, not everyone has the same childhood, right? Some people might grow up with parents who neglect them. They might grow up with poverty. They might grow up with abuse. They also talk about how children find happiness in like small things. For example, when someone buys them clothes. But I'm sure it's not an exclusive gain that they have on their side of the world, because right now, for example, an adult can also go to a shop and buy something and be really happy. So what their argument is not really exclusive on their side of the world. I'm now going to move on to framing. In the status quo, it looks like a world where people romanticize childhood, seeing it as innocent and joyful. But this view is deeply flawed. Childhood is also a time of confusion and limited understanding, which my second speaker will elaborate about. This debate matters because it shapes how we value different stages of life, like childhood and adulthood. We, the opposition, believe that childhood is important, but not really the best. The best years are vary from person to person, because some person might not like their childhood that much but prioritize their adulthood more. I'm now going to move on to definitions and setup. So what is the best years in this debate? That means the most fulfilling, meaningful, and empowering phase of life. So the stakeholders are all individuals across life stages, children, adults, and society at large. They look like people who obviously want to live like a happy life. Our burden of proof is that that we must prove that other life stages, especially adulthood, offer greater fulfillment and value. The proposition must prove that childhood offers the highest quality of life across emotional and social dimensions. In our world, in our counterfactual, people recognize that life improves with growth, autonomy, and lastly, even purpose. Now I'm going to move on to my argument. First, on the lack of autonomy in childhood. So what does this basically mean? Childhood is marked by dependence and restricted freedom, making it less fulfilling than adulthood. Here's how this basically works. Children cannot choose where they live or what they eat and how they spend their time. For example, if a child wants to eat a certain type of vegetables like tomatoes, their parents might believe that tomatoes are not good for them and hence not give it to the child. But if you're an adult and you really like tomatoes, you can go out and actually buy it and eat it. So basically, their lives are controlled by parents, teachers, and institutions. Basically, all adults around them. So when they're adults, they have life on their own terms and can control what they do. Even sometimes joyful moments are often structured or conditional. For example, playtime and holidays. So the impact is that autonomy is equal to fulfillment. Adults can pursue passions and make meaningful choices which they generally want. Childhood may feel safe, but it lacks a depth and agency that defines a true best life phase, because there's no freedom of choice on their side of the world. So yes, let's do some weighing. So let's say that freedom from responsibility makes childhood better. But we argue that freedom to choose is more valuable than freedom from burden. A life without agency is not good. So to conclude, childhood is important, but it is not the best. It is a phase of preparation. The best years are those where people live with purpose and autonomy. We urge you to reject the romanticization of childhood and recognize other stages in life. Thank you.
The leader of opposition has provided an argument of why the opposition team wants this debate. However, today I rebut against her argument and then finally move on to the government team's final argument of why we believe that childhood is the best years while growing up. Now, without further ado, let me move on to rebutting the leader of opposition's first argument of childhood is too dependent on basically what they said. So basically what they said is that although childhood might be good, but it's not the best years in their life, since they're basically controlled by their parents. However, it's not true, since parents give reasons on basically every time or their children doesn't want to do something and they complain. They give reasons why they're doing this, so they can help them. Maybe she said about maybe the children might not like tomatoes, and then the parents might force them to eat it, and that's the reason why the parents make their children eat tomatoes. It's because they know that it's good for their bodies, and even if they don't like that, it's their duty as legal guardians to take care of them and make them eat healthy things while growing up. Moreover, although children as children might be controlled by parents, adults are have no one to depend on since they're all grown up, and like they can basically do whatever they want to, just like how the leader of opposition did. However, this could get too wild since like they might become an alcoholic, they might do drugs, they might commit crimes, they might also go into the black market and just like get arrested. All of these, no one's going to stop them if they're adults. While children, they have adults who they can depend on and tell them like if it's bad or not, and adults our guidance and telling them it's bad and while they're growing up, telling them and learning why it's bad for them, and therefore this argument does not stand. Now move on to the government's side's final argument of children have less to worry about while and have a better experience in everything. The meaning of this is that children's lives are although they are control sometimes ordered around by their parents, they are more they are more to enjoy, while adults compared to adults when they have to worry about almost every single thing. This is true since children they don't have to worry about jobs, taxes, and whatsoever, etc. While children in their youth from a 1-year-old to 18-year-old, they can enjoy going to school and having and making bonds with their friends. I can also enjoy a summer breaks, winter breaks, and basically almost every single holiday, and they don't have to worry about like earning money. They also have parents to depend on, just like how the Prime Minister has stated, and moreover, from like maybe like a teenagers, they can also get part-time jobs. Which they can always quit, and they don't have to really take it like all that seriously, like adults have to, since that's their main way to survive. But like these teenagers, they still have parents, and they can always quit if like their part-time jobs are like too like hard, and like that's and etc. And therefore, for my rebuttal and my argument, I'm more than proud to propose.
Roadmap of my speech, I'll be doing rebuttals, rebuild our own case, and bring in two unique arguments. On to some rebuttals. So, first, the proposition's case relies on the universal claim that childhood is the best stage of life. But that claim ignores one of the most basic truths about being human. We are all different, we show diversity, and what makes life best is not written by our age, but by our experiences, our choices, and our growth. My first speaker made this very clear, panel. And the proposition here still do not understand. They said autonomy is not important because adults make reasonable choices, but that's not the point, panel. Autonomy means having the freedom to make your own choices, not just making good ones in childhood. You don't get to choose much. You don't get to choose your school, your schedule, etc. But even if we take that panel, and even if we take that, sure, some people like childhood, that is still on our side because they have to argue that everyone believes that childhood is the best years of their life. However, can just prove that some people who might like an older age might enjoy it because happiness is not defined by age, panel. And now let's rebuild our case. Okay, so they also talk about how your schedule, your meals are all going to be like made by adults, and that makes you like free and you don't have to worry at all, panel. A teenager's first job is to worry, panel. Then why do teenagers have mental health problems today? Or proposition, why do they? Because they actually worry, panel. And childhood is not this utopia, but neither is life, panel. You have to figure it out, and that's what part makes life kind of interesting sometimes. Now on to my arguments. I'll be doing two. One on there's no single best stage in life, and second on how happiness is subjective, varying when you define it by age. On to my first argument. Life is not a single peak of joy. It's a series of different highs, each meaningful in its own way, right? A child finds joy in imagination, a teenager in discovery, and an adult in independence, right? To say that one stage is the best erases the beauty of all of the others. Happiness comes not from being stuck in one time, but from overcoming challenges and challenging as we grow. If childhood were truly the best, it would mean everything after is a decline, and that's a deeply hopeless simplest way to see life panel. You know a team has already lost a debate when they have to go to the stance that one certain aspect of life is the best, not actually understanding that the status quo must value life and that everyone else is different. Thirdly, for a child facing poverty or family conflict, adulthood may finally bring safety. For teenagers feeling lost, midlife may bring them meaning. Right? The best stage is not fixed; it's personal panel, and this is what the proposition forgets again and again. Okay, you know what? I'll stop for POI. 3, 2, 1. Okay, continuing. The impact of this is by claiming one best stage, the proposition here is completely off in their world. The proposition disrespects billions of individual stories, while author actually celebrates life as a continuous journey and not a single golden window that, oh, you live here in heaven for a few weeks and then go back into your normal world. No, panel, it's not that. Also, they paint adulthood as this terrible thing where you go to drugs and enter black markets. Panel, that's not realistic, and maybe that's also very unlikely. Okay, this brings me to my second argument about how happiness is subjective. What makes life best on what you value, not the age you are. There's a few reasons for this. Firstly, some find happiness in freedom, others in love, others in purpose, and they aren't all tied to childhood. They are tied to who you are as a person. Secondly, psychological studies show that happiness levels fluctuate throughout life, right? They often rise in adulthood, and people gain stability, purpose, and control. So the idea that their childhood is always the best is completely flawed, right? It's also unscientific. We often say the childhood was the best only because we remember it selectively. The fun, not the fear. The comfort, and not the confusion. That's not the truth, it's sentimentality, right? The impact of this, if happiness is subjective, then this notion collapses entirely, because what's best if there's one, if one is meaningless for another.
Status quo. Most of the people thinks their childhood was the most happiest time in their whole life. Getting help from adults has unlimited resources like creativity, open-minded, flexibility, and more. So, as a government whip of today's debate, I'll present 2 clashes in my speech. Now, moving on to our team's first clash. Our team's first clash is, would the child be alone? The opposing team said that adults would be happy being independent. However, adults can't get help, nor even rely on their parents, and I will explain further on in my clashes. And the opposing team also said that children are controlled by their parents in their childhood. However, children are not always following their parents. Judge, think about it. If you were the child, will you listen to your parents saying, go on the highest part of the mountain and fall off and die? Children would listen to their parents since they think it is the right thing to follow. For example, like cleaning up your room and etc. So they decide if they should listen to their parents or not. They should not follow if their parents' words are appropriate enough. Now, however, our team said that children still have someone to rely on when they make a mistake, to the adults or the parents. It doesn't mean that children won't do anything and just get like a 100% help from their parents and like be irresponsible in their future too. It means that they can at least get help or an encouragement rejected, even though it is a very small help nor a very small encouragement like let's do this. However, let's compare adults. When they make a mistake, when like children's mistake is really small and like adults' mistake is really big and different, adults' mistake is really bigger. And when the adults ask for help to their parents and other adults, what would the parents say? They would say, do it by yourself. You are an all-grown adult. This shows that adults can't even get a little encouragement nor a help to anyone nor anything. Now, moving on to our team's second clash, which is sorry. The opposing team said that. Now moving on to our team's second clash, which is, would children have happiness in every situations? The opposing team said that everyone's childhood is different. Yes, this might be true. However, the important thing of childhood happiness is the hope. Every child has limited resources, including hope and flexibility, etc., as I mentioned earlier. Children can also feel happiness in their childhood, even though they're still poor or etc., blossoming and expressing their own creativity. However, our team said that children have unlimited resources. Rejected resources when adults doesn't, for example, doesn't have like creativity, flexibility, and etc., like to including hope too. Children will use these unlimited resources enjoying their own childhood years. But what would these unlimited resources lead to? These resources will lead to children having a better experiences compared to their like adulthood, like having friends with only businesses and like drinking alcohol or etc., like jobs and etc. Children or only like making friends with like happiness and etc. So this shows that children's most happiest years would be the childhood years. So Judge, today I presented 2 clashes and I'm very proud to propose. Thank you.
The point of a wall that is broken and dirty, a wall that you cannot lean on? What is the point of a small gift or a small gift to yourself if you have the autonomy to work harder and buy something better? Good evening to the House at large. My name is Shrihan Goyal, and today, as the whip of opposition, a few things in my speech today. First of all, I'll show you how we win on all the on the important stakeholders that emerged in this debate. Then I'll clarify some key terms and how opposition case just falls, and I'll finally analyze the clashes and show you how we win. Throughout today's debate, the key stakeholders are each individual, their family, and society. I will argue that deciding which stage of life, childhood or adulthood or your 80s, is best is a matter of personal opinion shaped by your experiences, your values, and the circumstances you were in at those times. No universal answer can apply for everyone, and acknowledging this diversity is crucial for winning this debate for proposition. But let's be clear today. The opposition says childhood is the best time because it is carefree and joyful, but they overlook the complexities and challenges children face, including dependence, vulnerability, and identity struggles. While they paint dependence as a beautiful picture, but more often than not, children in more in rural areas have parents who send them to do child labor, parents who abuse them. So, but adulthood brings autonomy and responsibility, but also offers the freedom to shape one's life, pursue meaningful goals in life, something that you cannot do as a child, which is something that proposition has not understood. Even if adults do bad things that get them into trouble, adults are expected to have better moral understanding because they see intentions, not just rules. Making mistakes doesn't mean they lack maturity. It means that they can think deeper and learn from their actions. Unlike children who follow rules not because they should, but because they need to avoid punishment. Even if that isn't true, many people in their late teens also commit crimes and have mental health issues if they were raised in a hostile environment. Because teens are also part of this childhood stage, but proposition has only been addressing to the younger people, and we've shown you how they are benefited on our side, how they are better on our side too. So now going on to the clashes in this debate, which side better achieves true happiness and fulfillment? The opposition claims childhood is happier because it lacks pressure and responsibility. Our side argues that happiness depends on individual personality and need. While children may enjoy play and fewer worries, many also face challenges like dependence and lack of control. This has been brought up by all my speakers. So we win this clash because we've shown you how even though adults have responsibilities, they gain freedom to pursue their own goals and don't have to adhere to what their parents ask them to be. So now the second clash, which side respects individuality more by recognizing the diversity of experiences. But we clearly win this clash because proposition has not even touched on this topic. It's so important because we've shown you in our burden that this is the way that we actually win this debate. Enforcing a one-size-fits-all best stage ignores this diversity and disrespects those who find meaning and joy in adulthood by giving wisdom to others and doing all the responsibilities that they are given. So, while the opposition pushes a narrow, idealized version of childhood as best for all, when the truth is that the best life stage depends on personal values and your experience. Our side says
Our side clearly wins this debate. I urge you to support our stance. With that, I'd like to rest my case.
Panel, you know, a team has lost a debate when they drop one of their main arguments in their second speaker speech panel. Okay, I'm the reply speaker for opposition, and I'll do a few things in my speech. I'll say what this debate was really about, our winning principles, and weighing, and then I'll close. Okay, panel. Let's start. The motion asks which stage of life is best. The proposition is childhood because it's carefree and innocent, but our side show you that the best stage of life is when you're in control of it, and this can be different for everyone. Panel. The opposition has no response to this, and that's why we mainly win this debate, because they haven't been able to rebut our autonomy and how we actually grow as people when we want to, because everyone is different. We win for a few reasons. First, there's no single best stage in life, and each phase brings a new form of happiness, discovery in childhood, and independence in youth, fulfillment in adulthood, and reflection at old ages, right? The proposition simplifies life into one peak. That means that everything after it will just be automatically bad, and you will set yourself in the ideology that, okay, I'm now 30 and I'm at the end where my life is going to be terrible because childhood is always the best part. Okay, panel? Now, let's do some rebuttals, okay? The proposition here has joy in saying that basically, children choose to respect or listen to their parents. There might be certain things they disagree on, panel, but even if we don't take the fact that adulthood is the best, we can still rely on in the opposition that not everyone is the same and everyone is different. Panel, they have no response to this, and this is mainly why we win this debate. Okay, now let's do some weighing and then I'll close. They rely on nostalgia, memories filled through simplicity, while we rely on reality, right? Because happiness that grows with freedom, maturity, and choice, they freeze joy in the past. We free it to exist in every chapter of life. So, panel, when you choose a story that ends at the age of 12, or a story where happiness evolves as you do, panel, because that at the end of the day is what's going to support people, empower them, and make them live happy lives, panel. Isn't it so obvious that side opposition has to win this debate and this motion has to fall for the future generations and how life is in the future? Because the best years of life aren't behind us, they're the ones we choose for ourselves, panel, and society. And that's why we're so proud to oppose this motion. Thank you.
Honorable Judge, isn't it clear that childhood years are the best years of life? In our world, we consider childhood years as the best years of life because children can depend on adults, feel good even in small things, and have less stress regarding money, jobs, and etc. However, in the opposing team's world, that they claim that adults are the best stage in life, claiming independence, freedom of choice, and more. But now, let me take an exact quote from the leader of opposition about the freedom to eat tomatoes. Judge, is the freedom to eat tomatoes more important, or the fact that children can depend on adults when when problematic issues happen more important? We believe that our world is more factual and beneficial compared to the opposing team's world. Now, as I finish explaining why our world is more better and beneficial than the opposing team's world, let me explain explaining both sides' burden and explaining why our team could overcome, why the opposing team couldn't. First of all, our team's burden was to explain why children's are the best years of life. We responded by stating strong arguments and ideas. However, how did the opposing team respond? They responded by stating the reasons of freedom of choice and etc. and explaining how everyone's values, even especially the child's values, are different. Therefore, our argument doesn't stand. However, we rebutted this successfully. Therefore, it increases the reasons why we should win this debate. In addition, let's say that what they said was correct and everyone, even especially the child, had different values. Then let me ask, don't adults also have different values too? They may let children do all the things they like, which this case destroys all their rebuttals and arguments against our argument. This is an important backlash because this proves that the opposing team's argument couldn't stand even more, and the reasons that the opposing reply speaker stated that we couldn't respond doesn't stand. So for these reasons above, I'm more than proud to propose. Thank you.